When we talk about Kislevites, we always think about their bear blobs because of how oppressive they are, but what about their infantry? Despite overshadowed by their bears, Kislev probably has the strongest infantry among all mortal men, nurtured by years of hardship among the Kislevite winter. So, in today's Wild Army build battles, we will be showcasing the Dazh Hearth-Blade here, and we will experiment with how to buff these guys through the roof and make them the super soldiers of Ursun. So for army builds, of course, we will be having the Dazh Hearth-Blades supported by the Kislev sanctioned national singer and also buff bot, the Patriarch here, with Thor's battle hymn for that battle stats modifier, Salek's lullaby for that active healing, and also Dazh's Song of Winter Sunlight for vigor refresh. Item wise, Balalaika of Arari for that persistent stat modifier, as well as the Dazh Brazier for that permanent healing. Now, for the Lord-wise, we have the Ice Witch with some ice magic, and only the buffing spells, Crystal Sanctuary, in case we need some emergency protection for the Dazh Hearth-Blades, as well as the Frost Blades, providing additional damage and attack stats. As for the rest of the army here, a whole lot of Kossar spears at the backline, providing extra missile fire, and a couple armored Kossars in the front. For the mobility, a whole bunch of Kossovite dervishes supported by horse archers. Deep inside the forest, there is a single unit of warbear riders, the Oath Brothers of Thor. Definitely a devastating unit, but today they won't be in the spotlight, as we'll be focusing on the Dazh Hearth-Blades instead. Now for our opponent here, the Greenskins, led by BBB Tokas, my clanmate, we have a lot of numbers here in the form of Orc Boys, Night Goblins, that is the Regiment of Renown 8-Peak Loonies, a bunch of more Orc Boys, and some Goblins on each flank. At the back we have some armor-piercing units, Hammer of Gork, providing some additional stat debuffs and long-range firepower, Black Orcs, a couple Stone Trolls, and in the flanks, a lot of mobility, Forest Goblin, Spider Riders, and also a single Squig Hopper in the right flank. In the front, there are some Greenskin staples here, a couple skirmishing cavalry, some on spiders, some on wolves. As for leadership, River Troll Hack with Spirit Leech, as well as a bit of melee attack debuff, the Overwhelming Odor, and also Skarsnik for that anti-large armor piercing. A pretty good choice considering that a lot of Lord choices for the Kislevites are armored bear characters. And yeah, that's basically it for the army builds. Now let's go into the battle itself and see what we can do to boost the battle performance of the Kislev most elite. The battle will start with a bit of shoot and scoot on both ends here, with both armies employing skirmishing cavalry. Goblin Spider Rider archers trading against horse archers, not the greatest trade for the Kislevites here, as the horse archers are quite a bit more expensive than the dirt cheap Gobble riders. However, still, the Gobbles need to retreat as the Kossars with spears are approaching with their superior range and also a lot of bow fire, so if they don't want to get shot to pieces, they need to back off. Though the bad news for the Kislevites is that with their slow infantry approach, the Dazh Hearth-Blades are taking noticeable damage, being hammered by the might of Gork, being hit by the Goblin Rock Lobbers Regiment of Renown. Especially with their gold chevron accuracy, the Kislevites are paying a dear price with every step forward. Nonetheless, the only option left for the Kislevite is to push ahead, though at least the skirmishers of the Greenskins are distracted by my characters. This allows my horse archers to move forward while the Gobble Rider archers will be backing off as my main missile battle line advances. Now on the right flank, the Kislevite managed to close in on the Gobble Spider Riders and get a charge on them, but then there will be more Gobbles to support, giving them a bit of a number superiority, forcing me to drop in more dervishes hopping to eliminate the Gobbles on the right flank. Now back to the front line, Kislev infantry actually stopped advancing, hoping to soften those Greenskins infantry with their missiles. But the Dazh Hearth-Blades do not have that kind of option and will charge forward, hoping to double time it into the Greenskin front line, being hammered by those artillery all the whole time. The Kislev characters will be ramming into the 8-Peak Loons, doing some nice impact damage and quickly pull out, dragging the 8-Peak Loons behind them, and also trying to avoid Skarsnik from sniping them out. And finally, the Hearth-Blades are in melee. Right now, they are poisoned, debuffed by the blinded effect from the Hammer of Gork, but soon enough, they will get buffed through the roof thanks to the double characters here. Solek's Lullaby giving them a heal to sustain their model count, and then also Dazh's Song of Winter Sunlight refreshing their figure, and on top of that, Thor's Battle Hymn, buffing their melee attack up to 90, combined with a Frostblade, now up to 114 melee attack. Look at these 8-peak loonies melt in melee combat against these powerful Tzar guards with great weapons. And don't forget, the Tzar guards with great weapons have bonus versus infantry, so mere gobbles have no chance in standing against the might of Kislev's finest, even if they are the unbreakable 8-peak loonies. Yes, they'll be fighting till the last gobble standing, but then again, it's been less than a minute since they got in contact with the Hearth-Blades, and they are almost completely wiped out. While on the flanks here, Armored Corsairs are pushing forward on the left flank. Armored Corsairs doing less well against the armor-piercing Stone Trolls with their massive 120 weapon strength. At the same time, my opponent doing quite a good job in shutting down my backline using that melee infantry or their mobility to pressure and silence my missile fire. Now, Kislevite Dazh Hearth-Blades will be engaging the Stone Trolls here, who are distracted by the Armored Corsairs, so doesn't quite get the charge onto my Hearth-Blades, while my infantry will be enjoying that 22 meager charge bonus, but better than nothing, I guess. They will be further protected by the Kislev Ice Magic Crystal Sanctuary, basically sustaining their health here, mitigating a lot of that incoming armor-piercing damage, considering that a lot of these Stone Trolls are hammering home with a buff of Wa, spite of that bad moon. This buffs the weapon strength of the Stone Trolls all the way up to 181. However, combined with the healing and the Crystal Sanctuary providing that 60% damage resistance, my Dazh Hearth-Blade will be holding in this battle, seeing how slow their hit points going down right here, with the help of my Patriarch and the Ice Switch spells. And on top of that, they do have the stats, the attack and also the armor piercing to punch through all the defenses of these Stone Trolls here, combined with their fire damage, giving them an advantage over the Stone Trolls' fire weaknesses. And now, one Stone Troll is wavering, two Stone Trolls are wavering, especially now that Oath Brothers have secured the backline, beating back all the greenskin mobility. The Stone Trolls will not be able to hold against all these armor-piercing troops anymore. In contrast, the Hearth-Blades are holding really well between the healing from the Patriarch, the damage reduction from the Crystal Sanctuary, and their own melee stats at 50 defense thanks to the Balalaika. The Stone Trolls struggle to do any meaningful damage, and these elite Sagas still have 60 out of 80 models. While at the back here, Corsairs with spears being hunted by a bunch of Forest Goblin Spider Riders, but they themselves can do okay in melee engagement like these. Of course, they will take a bit of impact damage, but overall, they should have enough stats to beat back the Spider Riders without any help. Behind them, the crew of the Hammer of Gork got knocked off their artillery models earlier and needs to remount those pieces as soon as possible. At the same time, the Hearth-Blades will be protected by Crystal Sanctuary once more, with that 60% damage resistance that is crucial for their survival against the armor-piercing Black Orcs. Especially now that the greenskin infantry are freed up to surround them after destroying my backline. Thankfully though, the combination of Ice Witch as well as the Patriarch on their bears managed to fend off the Giant River Trollhack, and on top of that, another Frostblade comes in. 68 attack, not as good as the combination with the Taurus Battle Hymn, but still enough to slice through all the meager defenses of 31 on the Black Orcs as well as all these Orc boys. Of course, there is also the melee attack debuff. It's not anything significant, but a consistent -9 attack debuff from the Ice Witch item Iron Ice Armor. This limited the damage output of the Black Orcs and allowed the Dazh Hearth-Blades to survive a lot better, especially now that the Dazh Hearth-Blades can counterpunch effectively, slicing through the hordes of greenskin units. They themselves getting almost 250 kills at this point, including a lot of that damage onto extremely expensive Stone Trolls and Black Hawks, while now my cavalry engagement able to stream forward after using my bears to punch through all their mobility, and of course the Corsairs with spears surviving the onslaught against the Gobble Spider Riders, buying time for the Bear Riders to secure the backline earlier. The flimsy Greenskins Gobble Riders simply do not have that kind of stopping power to drag down the Warbear Riders or even delay their advance, and now the Warbear Riders have basically free reign as most of the infantry support and the big hitters of the Greenskins armies have been routed solely by the Dazh Hearth-Blades. And all the Kislev infantry are free to charge straight into the Hammer of Gork, silencing these artillery once and for all. And the remnants of the Wolf Riders will also be routed. Skarsnik though trying his best to snipe out my leadership here, dropping a fermented fungi hoping to pin down my Ice Witch with that rampage effect, but unfortunately that is not successful. Now that the Dazh Hearth-Blade being buffed up once again by that 24 melee attack from the Frostblades, Skarsnik is in big trouble, dealing with a bunch of elite infantry. Not exactly the target he wants to deal with. If he can go for a one-on-one on either the Patriarch or the Ice Witch with Ice, yes, he will win, but unfortunately, surrounded by elite infantry, this cunning war boss will go down, while the Stone Trolls here finally recovered their leadership, returning for a second round, but unfortunately, once again, there will be Dazh Hearth-Blade pushing forward to deal with them, while the Giant River Troll hack will be surrounded by a bunch of anti-large bears. She will go down as well, and there goes army losses. The Greenskins shall be routed. So just quickly having a look at the army performances, the Oath Brothers did okay, 1200 gold damage, mostly intact in terms of health, but the real MVP of the entire game, the Dazh Hearth-Blades, over 300 kills, more than 3,500 gold worth of damage value, basically annihilated 1/4 of the entire Greenskin army, cutting down both Stone Troll units, the Black Orcs, and of course the 8-peak loonies, and very possibly did some massive damage to both the Giant River Troll hack with their flaming attacks and also the anti-infantry attacks against Skarsnik, cutting down all these orc boys as well, just doing massive damage overall. With that in mind, let's dive into a bit more details of this build, checking out their strengths and weaknesses, and of course think about more ways, more wild ideas to play around with this build. Primarily, this build combo is to use the Hearth-Blades' amazing melee stats to decimate enemy infantry from mid-tier to low-tier. As you can see here, at around 1 minute 30 seconds, the Hearth-Blades have engaged the Longbeards and now buffed up with Frostblades and Thor's Battle Hymn. They are just destroying the Longbeards within a great hurry. Not even half a minute has passed and the Longbeards are already wavering and routed. Well, that's like, what, 25 seconds after they first contacted, and now the Hearth-Blades, taking some minor damage, will be able to move on. Now, one thing of note is that despite me using those attack buffs simultaneously, it is best to use them separately due to how hit chances are calculated. I was only doing that to break through the front line ASAP so I can silence the cannons at the back who has been picking off my elite infantry. But sometimes you just need that extra push to punish your opponents with a lot of melee attack. Now let's fast forward as they will be charging into another wave of dwarf infantry, Longbeards with great weapons this time, and the healing will be sustaining them alongside some Crystal Sanctuary. This combination of spell and ability in the right situation can make any unit extremely durable, which actually deserves another replay as an example of its own. This Kislev build has a lot of ways to mitigate damage and boost the tankiness of the Hearth-Blades. Other than the staple healing, when the damage is a little bit too much, bursting down the HP of the Dazh Hearth-Blades, there is an emergency pick-me-up with that Crystal Sanctuary. Now, they can't move, but when you're getting charged, it doesn't really matter, and that 60% damage resistance can be really important in stabilizing your HP losses, just like here, allowing the Dazh Hearth-Blades to hold against the armor-piercing Heralds of Khorne, Blood Reaper, all these Bloodletters, as well as the Gorbeast Chariots who, well, plowed through the formations. But anyways, these Hearth-Blades are now stabilizing their HP losses and slowly picking up their HP regeneration with the help of the Dazh Brazier, as well as a little bit of Solak's Lullaby from the Patriarch earlier. And with that, the Dazh Hearth-Blades are able to slowly and steadily cut down all those Bloodletters in this kind of prolonged melee fight. And don't forget that when the Patriarch is around them, they will be receiving +5 melee defense thanks to the Balalaika of Arari, combined with the Ice Witch's Iron Ice armor, which gives a minor -9 attack debuff to surrounding units. It basically minimizes the hit chances on any unit surrounding this kind of melee blob, formed by the most elite of Kislev infantry and its characters. Now, the Hearth-Blade seems to be fighting a hopeless battle, being grind down by a bunch of Bloodletters, wave after wave of armor piercing, and even some Skull Crushers charges straight into their backs. And once again, the Crystal Sanctuary, plus 60% damage resistance coming to the rescue. Combined with Borrowed Blood, making them unbreakable, these Kislevite elites will be fighting tooth and nail to their death. Instead of getting cut down by the Bloodletters, they actually sent those Demons of Khorne all the way back into the warp. And they shall be free to charge into combat near the Patriarch, enjoying that health regeneration brought to them by the Dazh Brazier. As you can see here, despite being surrounded by enemy units, they can still regenerate their health thanks to their amazing defensive stats, preventing enemies to landing hits on them, and with their impressive leadership, they are still fighting valiantly despite down to only 18 models. Now we can't talk about a build without speaking of their weaknesses, and the biggest weakness of the Dazh Hearth-Blades blob is that they are very vulnerable to armor-piercing missiles. Against melee attacks, even if armor-piercing, they can rely on their melee defenses to hold their own, but when there is missiles coming in, unfortunately both armor and their melee defense would do nothing against armor-piercing shots like, say, the Darkshards here, forcing them to take massive damage throughout the combat, and in the end, not even the healing was enough to catch up with that kind of HP losses, especially when the Patriarch is forced to go and shut down these Darkshards in the far end. And on top of that, they are not exactly great at fighting single entities. Yes, they are good against footlords or whatnot, but when they are fighting single entities, they can't exactly use all their unit models to completely surround the single entity, and that means their damage output would be limited since they only have a limited units coming in contact with the enemy. So honestly, this build is not exactly the most competitive as there are a lot of ways to counter it, but still, seeing these elite infantry shredding enemy frontline is definitely a sight to behold. Of course, there are more than one way to play this build. For example, the Crystal Sanctuary can be used as a great emergency protection for troops that got stranded in crossfire or just being sniped. Just like here, my Patriarch overextended attempting to silence Alif Anar. But then the Crystal Sanctuary massively reducing incoming damage for him. This gives him much better chance to survive among all these crossfire from the Fireball, all the Shadow Warriors, and of course Alif Anar, the Shadow King himself. You can also replace the Ice Witch with a Frost Maiden so that you can lead the army with the Mighty Boris. This gives the Tzar gods access to the melee defense buff Hold the Line, and of course gives your army a powerful duelist. Though personally I wouldn't do that because it drains too much of your funds into the leadership. Anyways, that's it for this wild army build, basically just stacking all kinds of buffs onto a single unit. A very effective way to fight in infantry blobs, especially clearing out all kinds of mid-tier to low-tier infantry. Even against high-tier infantry like Chosen, they can still do their job pretty well. Combined with all kinds of healing and damage mitigation abilities and items from the Kislevite leadership, the Dazh Hearth-Blades, especially with the Kislev Bio Blood Unbreakable effect, will not go down easily. A very simple way to design a build, but can be surprisingly effective in the right scenarios, showing that Kislev is not only all about the bears, but the infantry themselves, if given the right support, can be equally deadly.